Welcome to another video about Batterite CamCrew. In this video, I will go through how to work with sequences and how to make sequences and record them and export them and all that. So if you made it this far through the videos, this is where the interesting stuff begins and how this tool is pretty powerful. First of all, we need the preview so we see what we are doing. And we also need a couple of menus. All of these we have gone through before, and I will just go through them and set up the good standard values that we used before. So visuals and camera movement, and then when you're done you can just place them back because we don't need them. Camera lens is the one that we might work with during the recording. So now we got everything set up. Let's look at this sequence editor. The first thing you're gonna notice is this timeline thing. And if we turn it on, we will see the current playback of the replay. And you got this start and end block right here, which you can just grab and move to whatever point you want to work with in the replay. And now the game will actually loop between those two indefinitely. And you can just work on this part. Let's continue with the different controls. First, we have the game speed, which is exactly what you expect it to be. So you can play the game at any speed you want. And you have the default button right here that resets it to 100%. These four switches over here are for rendering to video. Once we have recorded some camera movement, we can actually choose whatever settings we would like and then flip the last switch and this will render it directly to video. Then we have these recording switches, which controls the camera recording. This first one, the record button, will actually record your camera movement in real time. So when you flip it on, it will reverse you 3 seconds before the green start block, and it will count you down with vibrations in the controllers for the point where it starts to record, the start of the loop. And then it will continue until it's done, and then it will just replay whatever you did with your hands. So let's try it. It counts me down, and then it starts to record. And now I just do something that is some sort of interesting camera movement here. Probably not that interesting, but just for show. And it's done. Now it just does exactly what I did. And it will just continuously do this over and over. And you can now work with this however you like. With all these features and all the settings you have available through the other menus. So for example, I can work with the field of view to change it. At the time I'm actually replaying it. And the movement I just did, the value change, the whole movement will be recorded as a whole animation of the value. So when it loops here, you will see the field of view slice back and forth like I did in the previous loop. And this works with all the values in the whole menu and most other menus. Not game speed though, not at the moment. And not the visuals or the settings in the visuals menu. So let's continue. This value 1.0 right here, it's a little bit tricky to explain exactly what it is. But remember that we are recording our movement in real time, which means I am sampling the position and rotation of your controllers in a specific frame rate. Now, if we record it in 90 FPS, which is the Vive and Oculus frame rate, then if you play it in slower speed than we recorded it, then it means that the game wants more positional data than we actually have recorded. So the game will interpolate and fill in the data that is missing with approximations, and you will probably not notice it at all. But if we pull this down, you can see that now it says 0.5. That means that for every frame or for every instance that the game engine wants to show on the screen, we only have half of frame data from my recordings. So it needs to sort of come up with the other half on the fly. And as long as it's above 0.2, 0.3, you will probably not notice it, but be aware of that value if you really go into hard slow motion. Here we have the start and stop switch for the recording itself, which if we pull it off, it will let you control the camera again. And if I flip it on again, it will start playing whatever I had recorded. Now, sometimes the loop doesn't start right away and you need to let it loop once through the whole recording before it kicks in. So let's just have it in a reasonable speed and wait it out, and it should start. And there we go. So now it plays back like normal. These two will let you re-record the target or camera movement. If you pull one of them, it will go back to like when you record from the beginning, and it will count you down with the vibration. So let's pull it, and you see it turns back and it waits me in, and I get to do something different with the target or the camera if you switch the other switch. So I'm just right now doing movement that is explicitly different from the first one, so you can see the difference right away. So now it loops and you can see the new data is recorded and it moves in the new way. There is one more nifty thing in this menu, which is the zoom or timeline zoomer. So if you want to work with a specific part of the timeline and you have a really long timeline, you can zoom in on parts of the timeline and choose wherever. Really useful when you have a long replay and you want to work with a small part of it, maybe a 2-second sequence. If we now want to render something to video, what you do is you find the part you want to work with. So let's make something a little bit shorter here, maybe in slow motion because it's cool. And let's change some view settings. A little lower field of view and higher depth of field always looks a little bit more cinematic, and the automatic depth of field length. And let's zoom in and find some part which looks nice. Here we go. I think I found something. So I pulled the record, and I'm just going to do something that feels a little bit interesting and will show off the encoding capabilities. And there it loops. So if we look at the result here, you can see it looks, I guess, kind of interesting. So first of all, for time's sake, I will not render in 60 FPS or 4K, and I will do it to RAW so it goes faster. And when I pull this render switch, it will go into this mode where you see the result with the progress bar on top. So let's do that. And now it's actually frame by frame rendering everything in perfect frame rate. In VR right now, I have a huge screen in front of me which shows exactly what you see on the screen, but in VR like a big cinema or something, which is you can actually enable that whenever you want. You don't need to go into rendering, and it's a really good way of previewing whatever you have recorded, or just watch the game. So now it's done, and you will have a file waiting for you in the game root. The codec used when you are rendering to RAW is DNX HD inside the MXF container. And this works well in Adobe Premiere Pro or similar. And if you switch off RAW, you will render to the WebM container with the VP8 video encoding and Vorbis sound encoding. Anyway, the final note I want to show is that whenever I animate this stuff, I do it by hand, and that might be a little bit unprecise. So there is a way to animate stuff with more precision, which is needed very much in some situations. So what you do is that you hold down your UI activation button and you get this hover highlight, and then you press the B button on Oculus or the touchpad on Vive. And then you sort of attach yourself to that UI interactable, and you get the ability to specifically change this directly with your thumbstick or the touchpad on the Vive. And this has a lot more accuracy than doing it by hand, just by sliding it. And this will record and it will release the connection whenever it loops, and it will be, it will animate exactly how you expect it to animate. And it's really good to get the precision really well when you're trying to do something advanced. What I have shown now is the tools we use to produce most every video content we are doing internally or with our partners. So you can do most everything we have done. So I hope you find it inspiring and try to do some really crazy and interesting videos with it. Thanks for watching.